Alright guys, well, I'm back today with a first shots and overview video of the brand new Hi-Point YC9 Generation 2. They offer a few models, but this is pretty much the standard model with the 10-round magazine, grip safety, threaded barrel, as well as a few other features which we'll talk about in a second. Now, as soon as they released it, I knew I had to get my hands on one because I review high value and budget items, and I actually purchased this one with the Patreon dollars, so I appreciate my Patreon supporters from American Tactical in Shelby, North Carolina. So they're always helping out the channel. They're always looking out for the channel, and I've done some pawn shop find videos over there. Definitely check those out. If you're in Shelby, head over there, tell them 704 Tactical sent you over, and they'll probably hook you up with some deals. But let's dig back into this pistol. Now, these generally sell, from what I'm seeing, anywhere from about $220 to about $230, which honestly is not super cheap. That is climbing up there to close to the price of a used Taurus G3C or some of the new Taurus G2Cs. There's also some of the Ruger 9mm base models that are around that price, as well as the Palmetto State Armory Dagger, which here recently has been selling for around $250 and about $260 with the threaded barrel options and optics cut. So I want to put that into perspective. Now, this is not a direct comparison videos. More of those to come in the future. If you guys want to see them, let me know in the comments section below. Before we get too far into it, I want to give a huge shout out to Callaway Ballistics for donating the ammo to help make this video. I shot both the 115 grain as well as the 147 grain they sent over and a few other rounds just to really prove it out. But these guys were the main ammo through this gun, and they've got the code 704 Tactical for 5% off and free shipping on orders over $200. And they just did price drops to where you can get this below $11 a box if you order $200 worth utilizing my code. Definitely check them out. So when we are looking at this handgun, one of the first things that'll strike you about it is it looks like the exact same profile as the Hi-Point C9, and for all intents and purposes, it's pretty much the same style gun. A massive, I'm talking massive slide that utilizes a direct blowback design with a fixed barrel, and that needs a large mass damper system, and that's what you get with the spring and slide action. So it operates on the same principles. Now let's start talking about the differences. And a lot of the differences come in with some nice added features to the base model style of the Hi-Point in general. One, on the slide itself, you actually have some nice serrations. They do a pretty good job to cock that handgun. No complaints with the serrations. It actually styles very nicely as well with more angled and tapered cuts. But if you're looking for a lightweight Hi-Point, you're not going to get one. The actual physics of this require the slide to be this heavy for it to function properly, so you're not getting around that. So if you thought the Hi-Point was a brick, now it's just a very styled brick, but a brick nonetheless. Obvious other improvements is the barrel, which is slightly longer now, and it's threaded 1/2x28. Now that is nice for quiet devices, as you can see in the intro, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the reliability section of this review. The main principles of extraction and operation are the same, but now they're allowing a lot of different opportunities for different optics mounting platforms to put on top of this, although I did not do that. And it looks like they have optics models available with the Crimson Trace dot already on them. The sights that are included, though, are the 3-dot sights or an actual ghost ring sight inside the box that you can swap out, which is pretty cool. Moving along to the frame itself, it's got pick rail up at the front, as you can see in the intro, and I threw one of these O-lights on here. Now, these O-Light Valkyrie Mini 2s are an adjustable track system light, and it barely clamped down with the quick detach system because this rail is a little bit wide. I believe I was about to take a file to this, but I end up getting it to clamp on. The trigger guard is fairly large. The trigger itself is pretty much a plastic Hi-Point trigger, nothing to write home about. We'll talk a little bit more about its performance again in the reliability section of the review. The grips themselves feel like a cheap ABS plastic, and you can see flex in the grips at the top. Now, I've actually tightened these down all the way. That's just the way they're designed. So you definitely get a lot of flex in the grips itself. Now, the grip safety I thought I wasn't going to like, but I didn't even notice it was there. It works out incredibly nice. I did not depress this, so the gun always worked good. Now, the mag release itself it's okay. It doesn't feel like super nice. You can hear it being a little bit gritty if you listen. And then the mags themselves are now 10-round mags instead of 8-round mags. So you can see the principle is still the same, and it almost feeds from a single stack mag up at the top and then turns into a quasi double stack mag. Now, one thing to note about these mags versus the previous 9mm high point mags is these seem to feed much more reliably, although it only ships with one and I only have one. I will be buying more depending on how well this video does and depending on the reception of this versus other firearms. Again, whether you guys want comparison videos or not. So a 10-round mag is definitely better than an 8-round mag, and the mag inserts fairly smooth and it locks up fairly solid. You can see the base plate has a lot of wobble in it. I mean, a lot of wobble. And when you depress that button, it wants to come out. It's a little bit spongy, but it won't drop free. It catches again. You almost have to physically pull this out. It won't even drop free at this point. Now you can hold down that mag release and it'll kind of go free towards the end. So not the greatest mag insertion and mag drop free system. The safety itself is still a bent piece of sheet metal, and this is also the slide lock open. So it is what it is there. That's how you'll lock the slide open. The barrel itself is a fixed barrel, so if you are putting quiet devices on the end, make sure you put your fixed barrel adapter. That's what I did with mine. And now this is where we can start talking about function down at the range, because I believe we've covered all of the kind of features of this. So the first functionality part of this review is going to be ergonomics. It feels better than the original high point in your hand. And dare I say, it feels sort of comfortable. It's not the worst gun I've ever picked up. In fact, there's no harsh edges on your hands. It actually flows very nicely, and the grips have slimmed down a little bit, but they are still pretty chunky. It's no small gun by any means. When you consider other guns in this price point, like the PSA Dagger and some of the Tauruses and the some of the Rugers, you're looking at a much slimmer gun or a much more ergonomic gun, but this one is definitely better than the original high point in my opinion, and it's got some very nice texturing right there. Again, the grips are flexy, so it kind of feels a little bit cheap up at the top. The trigger on this, it's a high point trigger. So you have this weird take up. It's got this take up. It hits a wall at first. And you have some sponge. Then it's almost like a break, but it didn't fire yet. It hit another wall. And then there's the break itself. Now the reset's going to be hard to demonstrate because it does have that mag safety. So I've got to put this back in. The reset, now you start letting go and the trigger just doesn't necessarily push on your finger too much. Now it starts to push out. You can feel almost like not necessarily a grit, but a rubbing sensation on the trigger. And then there's that reset. You pull it, sponge, and then the break. It is a high point trigger. It's not very good. It does the job, it works, but it's not very good. I don't gotta say it's the worst trigger I've ever felt on a handgun similar to this, but it's pretty down there. But not to get too down, let's move on to some of the other kind of reliability things with this gun. It fed and functioned great out of the mags, which was kind of surprising because a lot of the high points I have, one of the real downfalls of it is the feed lips or the feeding of the magazines. And there's always tips or tricks to kind of smooth out some of the edges, bend some of the feed lips, and sometimes mags work better than others. The fact that this one went from a double down to a single, I thought was going to have more issues, but it didn't. It also chambered rounds better than the original High Point, so I'm not sure if they changed some geometry internally with the feed ramps, but it seemed to do pretty good feed-wise. No real issues there. Again, using 115, 124, and 147 grain ammo down at the range, we had no feed issues out of the High Point. One thing I do want to say though is I haven't tried hollow points. Maybe I will. I don't know if I want to invest hundreds of dollars of hollow points to put into this gun. Again, it depends on if you guys want to see a lot more about this. That's something I can do. A great way to support the channel to help a lot of these things become a reality is to basically subscribe, like, share my content, follow me on my Twitter, my Instagram page, my other platforms, and my Patreon page. And if you click a lot of those links on those options, they're affiliate links, so it brings you actually to sales and discounts at no extra cost to you, but it helps out the channel, allowing me to do more videos. Now, reliability, besides the feeding, was 100% reliable with about the 250 to 300 rounds I put through it. So remember, this is a first shots and overview. I literally just got this today, and I want to get the video out as soon as possible so you guys can get some info about it. But it functioned great with 115, 124, 147. It liked 115 and 147 the best when it comes to recoil impulse. The recoil impulse was actually very smooth with the Callaway Ballistics 115 and 147, so the recoil wasn't that bad. It was manageable. Now with the NATO spec 124 grain high-powered stuff, it was snappy. Definitely a high bore axis on this, a lot of reciprocating mass. It just didn't feel quite as well in my hands. I wouldn't recommend shooting that 124 grain hot NATO spec stuff. Stick with 115 ball. You'll be good to go. Switch to 147s when you put the quiet device on the end. And with the quiet device on the end of this, it worked out great. I mean, not a ton gas back in your face. Because the sight sits up so high, you could actually clear the top of it and engage your target. And that's where I think this actually might shine. It was really smooth shooting with the quiet device on the end. You don't have to worry about feed or function actually changing because it's a non-tilting barrel. It's a fixed barrel system, and this actually has a leg up over other options on the market, and that's where this option may really shine as a quiet device host, because out of the box for right at about 220, you get something with that 1/2x28 threads where you don't have to worry about feed or function, which makes it more reliable with that quiet device on the end. So the reliability was unaffected by that whatsoever, which is a great addition to this platform. In summary, is this worth the money? I feel like High Point has done an amazing job. If they could have kept the price a little bit closer to the original C9 with just these improvements, I feel like this would have been an absolute home run. Like if this was hitting that $150, $160 price point, hands down, I mean, I would be recommending it for that price point. There's other guns in this price, that price point, that 160, 170, that I don't really recommend at all. But up into the 220 range, you start creeping into other platforms and you have to weigh the benefits. Again, this is heavy. It only holds 10 rounds. The grips flex a little bit. The safety is a sheet metal safety. It doesn't have kind of that traditional slide release. The trigger is spongy and mediocre at best. The pick rail is slightly large for most of the lights I tried. The sights themselves, even though they may be interchangeable and at optics cuts, aren't as interchangeable as other ones on the market. So you start seeing a lot of the cons build up in this pistol, but again, it's kind of to be expected with a more affordable, cheaper budget High Point. But when you're elevating the price point to this standard, you've got to do a little bit more for me to fall in love with it at this price than what this is. I do like it. It's not a bad gun. In fact, I actually would recommend it if you could find one used, if you can find one on sale, if the prices drop. I'd love to see this sub $200. I think that would be where this pistol really shines. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. This is just my humble opinion. I'd like to hear from you guys. With other options out there like the daggers that I've been talking about at the $220 to $250 price point, I feel like it's worth saving the extra money. I would personally buy the dagger or the Taurus G3C over this. But again, if this has the potential to drop a lot more in price, I think it becomes a viable option. I appreciate all of your time. I know this was a longer one. I'd love to hear you guys in the comments section below. Sound off, argue it out, tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right. I'm excited to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.